And let me go ahead and take a sip of water before we get started. All right. So we talked about yesterday, the different ways to go ahead and access the switch via physically or remotely, right? What I mean by that, of course, is using the console port along with the console cable or SSH or Telnet, right? And of course, wonderful guest yesterday, Mo, went ahead and explained the difference between Telnet and SSH, and of course, showed you guys, of course, what a console cable looks like and a console port on a switch, right? And the different flavors of how to console in a switch using the different type of cables, right? But now, right, the scenario that we go ahead and get into a switch, we have to talk about once we're in, how do we navigate, right? And the first part of us learning how to navigate is to know about the different modes, right? And there's a couple of different modes, and we're going to go over it today. And I'll show you guys some examples, some screenshots, or what have you. Please ask questions at this part. Every single slide is a key topic. I don't care if it doesn't say key topic, it is a key topic for the exam and for your networking career. Networking career, if you want to do security career, if you have to log into a firewall, what have you, these are the basics. Okay, so user and enabled privilege modes. Okay, first, when you get into a switch, typically you will, and if we're talking about Cisco, you get into a switch or a router, you will be at user mode. If there's no user prompt, username prompt, or what have you, as far as you get to log in, you immediately be brought to user mode, right? I'll show you guys what that looks like, right? To get to privilege mode, right, or enable mode, right, you put in the command enable, right, to go ahead and get to enable mode, right? Simple enough. But what the hell does these two modes mean, right? So what these mean is the amount of access you have, right? The amount of commands that you have at your disposal on the switch between these different modes, right? And so let's go ahead and dive into what I mean by that. Okay, here's a little excerpt, but I'll come back to that, right? So let's take a look at this slide because it says a lot, right? So I get into the switch, user access verification. So this is a slide that's showing, hey, first you have to log into the switch, right? And we log in, we put our password, right? And we get in, right? And we are at user exec mode, right? How do we know that? We know that by looking at the left side, right, of the screen, and we see the name of the switch or the network device, right? We're going to say it's a switch for now. And in front of it, right, it is a greater than sign, right? And so we see that, right? And we go ahead and see, hey, it's trying to, the person that's on the CLI is trying to do the reload command. And it's saying, hey, translate, right? And of course, it's trying to see if it knows that command at this mode. It does not, right? Because again, there are a limited amount of commands at user mode, okay? To do any other type of commands, right, we need elevated privileges, right? I'm sure you guys heard of privileges before in your career, what have you, right? So we need to go ahead and put in enable, right, for us to get to privilege mode or enable mode, right? So we go ahead and type in enable within user mode. If you have configured a password, you'll be prompted for enable password. Once you put that in, boom, you will be at enable mode or privilege mode. And how you would tell that you are in privilege exec or privilege mode or enable mode is that you'll see that pound symbol in front of the host name of the device, switch or router. Okay, simple enough. And of course, as you can see, this person that's on this device, they tried to do the reload command in user mode. It didn't work. As soon as they get into enable mode, they were able to process the reload command. The switch recognized it. They were able to go ahead and process that reload. Okay, let's keep going. All right, so this is what, of course, what you guys saw on the previous slide, right? This is just going a little bit more in depth, right? So it's always recommended, mind you, these network devices let you do whatever you want on them. right? There's no guidelines. There's no what you should do, right? These devices are going to let you do whatever you want with them. How you secure them is up to you, right? So a part of this, right, getting into the switch and accessing it, right? If you're configuring this, right, and you're managing this switch, you want to go ahead and put in password security, right, for CLI access, right? Because you don't want different types of people getting unauthorized access into this device, right? Because they can bring down a network. They can misconfigure something and bring down a network. They can copy the password and do some malicious things within the device. So you want to go ahead and put in a password for different types of access, the different ways that you access a device, right? So you can put in a username and password requirement if you're accessing via console. You can put in a username and password requirement if you're accessing via SSH or Telnet, right? In this slide, right, if we go ahead and do a show run config, like I told you guys, we can see the password for the enable secret, right? Or the enable password, right? It's called love. We can see the password for logging in via the console, right? And so this is how we can go ahead and mitigate that access to go ahead and get into that device, right? So we go ahead and put in, of course, if we try to log into the console, as we see right here, to get into the console, if we plug in a console cable, right, and we're trying to access the switch that way, that password is fake. Okay. And once we get in, we'll be in user mode. And if we want to go to privilege exec mode, that password is love. Okay. So this is one example of doing some password security for CLI access from the console. Okay. So Mo, you know what this means. And Ryan, I'm sure you know what this means, right? I tell you guys this all the time. Utilize the CLI help features. It is impossible for any engineer, any type of engineer, security, server, whatever. Nobody's going to remember everything, right? Even the 20-year vets that's been in the game, they're not going to remember everything. Always use the help command. The help command is signified by that question mark, right? It's available in any mode. It's going to show you the commands that are available to you, right? And what you could do, right, is it just doesn't stop there, right? You can use the help command, right, which is a question mark, in different flavors. You can put in, maybe you remember one part of the command, but you don't know the rest. You can put in the first part of the command, put a question mark. Or you can go ahead, maybe you don't know how to spell out the full command. You can put some of the letters that you remember and then the question mark. It'll give you what are the possible flavors of that command, right? Maybe there's a command that you want to put in that it has words, but it also has parameters, right? You can go ahead and put in a question mark and say, oh, okay, so I can put in a number, value, or et cetera, what have you, right? It'll give you that. There are different flavors of using this help command. Take note of this. Please utilize it. If you're learning, it's a great way to learn, right? If you're in your lab, you're trying to learn, you're configuring something, it's a great way to learn. What I recommend is do this in your lab, right? And also do it in production, right? But really take your time and read, right? There's a lot of people that try to rush. Oh, that's exactly what I need. Slow it down, lay out first, slow down your brain and lay out what you're trying to find out and use that help command alongside using some Google food, right? And understand what you really want to do. Because, of course, using the wrong command, if you don't understand it properly, you can bring down the device, you can bring down a network, et cetera, et cetera. And you can go ahead and get ready to start packing your bags and get ready to get fired, right? So we don't want that to happen. So use your better judgment. Cisco and other companies make it available for people that administer a network device. Go ahead and use it. Okay. There's a couple other shortcuts too, right? That you want to learn. And of course, this comes with time, right? So the more that you practice in the CLI, and in regards to Cisco, and this applies to any other vendor, right? Um, whoever has a CLI, Palo Alto, Juniper, or what have you. And these are just vendors that I went ahead and configured and play with their CLI. They more so followed Cisco's framework, right? And they have the same, the same thing across the board. Okay. So let's talk about these key sequences, right? The up arrow, right? Or control P, right? What does that do, right? Maybe you're troubleshooting, maybe you're trying to find something out, right? And you typed in one command, right? And maybe you've been typing a few commands and you're thinking, man, I need to go back to use that, to use the command that I put in 3 or 4 commands ago. You can use the up arrow to go ahead and take a look at previous commands. Okay. So you can go ahead and press it as much as you want. There is a limit, right, on that history of commands, right? And we'll take a look at that, and I'll show you guys what that value is and how you can modify that. But there is you can use the up arrow to go ahead and look at your command history and use that same command again and again and again, right? All right. But as we can go, back in history, we could always go forward, right? Maybe, Ryan is going ahead and looking at his command history and he's went too far back. There is a way that you can come back, right? Maybe you skip the command that you were looking for. You can use the down arrow to go ahead and look at, hey, maybe I skipped it, to come back down the history buffer, as they call it, to go ahead and see the command that you're looking for, okay? And this works at any prompt, by the way, okay? Now, let's say you have the command type, right? Or you're typing the command, right? You make a mistake or you want to switch something, what have you, right? Maybe you want to switch the IP address after you typed it in. And before you press enter, you want to go ahead and modify something. You can use the left and the right arrows to move left and right between the syntax, right? And whatever you typed out to make edits or what have you, okay? And not just the left and right arrow, you can use Control B and Control F, okay? Last but not least, the control sequence backspace. You can go ahead and move that cursor, right, that you use to go ahead and put in commands. You can go ahead and either delete characters, make a space between the commands, make a space between the commands, or do a few things with the backspace bar. Let's say you do a show run configuration, right? You can use spacebar to speed through looking at the entire output of that command. Okay, and we'll take a look at that during our lab fun day. All right. Now, we went ahead and talked about the CLI help features, right? And again, this may be a long one, but I need to talk about all these before we start having fun and taking a look at all this stuff. So, alongside with getting your CCNA, that means you understand how to administer, troubleshoot, or what have you, a network infrastructure device, more so a Cisco device, right? There's 2 things that will help you along that way of troubleshooting or administering it: the debug commands and the show commands. Okay. And the show commands, it has, a boatload of options at your disposal for show. Using the show command along with the CLI help features can help you with troubleshooting, right? So you can't go wrong with the show command, right? So it's free game there. You just have to, like I said before, know what you're looking for. On the flip side, the debug command, double-edged sword. Okay, you really have to understand what you're doing with that debug command. Okay, I don't have any examples I can show you guys on Lab Fun Day, but using a specific debug command, right, with specific parameters, and you're looking for something, what will happen is you will use a specific debug command. You'll get what you want, right? But at the cost of maybe you're having the CPU utilization go up, and you can possibly bring down that device. Okay, so show commands, harmless. You just have to know what you're looking for. The debug, you have to be extra super careful on using this debug command, all with helping with troubleshooting or monitoring and administrating that device. Okay, let's keep going. So, and this is the nitty gritty. I love this fun stuff, right? Just a review, right? If we, of course, we want to get into the device, we first get in, we're at user mode, right? If we want to do a little bit more, different commands, maybe commands that require some privilege, we go ahead and need to type in enable on the CLI within user mode to go ahead and get to privilege exec mode or enable mode, right? Or privilege mode, any different names or what have you, okay? But what if we needed to go ahead and configure the device that you're on, right? Then we need to go ahead and switch to global configuration mode, okay? And how do we get there, right? There's a command called configure terminal, right? That'll bring us to global configuration mode, okay? And this, again, it's exactly how it sounds. Global configuration mode makes changes to that device, okay? User mode, you can take a look at certain things. So mostly there's going to be show commands there. Enable mode, you can go ahead, you do the same thing that you do at user mode, but of course there's some privileges that you can maybe reload the device, shut down the device, maybe set the clock, right? Set the timer, what have you, right? But you can't configure anything on the device that affects it globally. Maybe a routing protocol, maybe spanning tree, right? Maybe IP address on interface. You can't configure that in enable mode. We need to go ahead and go to global configuration mode, okay? Let's go ahead and dive in this rabbit hole of global configuration mode. Okay, so configuration, submodes, and context, or what have you. Let's go ahead and talk about that. Okay, so like I told you guys on how to get to global configuration mode, right? While you're in enable mode, you go ahead and type configure terminal or config T to go ahead and get to global configuration mode, right? If Ryan wants to set the host name on a Cisco switch, right? He can do that in global configuration mode. But if Ryan wants to go ahead and maybe configure a password whenever somebody tries to get into the device using a console cable, he has to get to line console configuration mode, right? And that's a sub mode of global configuration mode, okay? And right, and you can do a few things that we talked about, what have you. But let's say Mo wants to go ahead and after Ryan went ahead and configured the password, right, in line console configuration mode, Mo wants to go ahead and configure an interface with an IP address, what have you, and different parameters. But Ryan didn't go ahead and get out of line console configuration mode. Mo's goal is to drop out of line console configuration mode, go back to global configuration mode, and get into interface configuration mode, right? Whole different modes, right? And so plenty of different things you can do, different flavors and different modes. And again, all of this comes with time. It is not, you're not going to know it just by reading it one time. You need to do labs. You need to go ahead and practice and practice and practice. Then it'll start to become second nature. Okay. So here's an example of exactly what I said, right? The only difference, right, is as you can see is from my explanation, right? Let's say Ryan went ahead and configured the line console password. What Mo didn't do, he didn't drop out of line console configuration mode. He went straight to that interface. This is an option. This is where I disagree with the book. If you're learning, I would say drop down one level and go back into global configuration mode and put this command in. Here's the reason why. Let's say you start to get some experience in the CLI or what have you, right? And maybe you're trying to use the help command, right? That's going to help you to learn, right? You won't ever, go ahead and take a look at these commands. If you say, hey, I'm trying to get to interface, maybe I forgot fast Ethernet or if it's gigabit or what have you, you can't use the question mark. It's not going to give you any output, right? So you want to go ahead, drop out, see what you're actually typing. Then after you get some experience, right, then you can say, all right, while I'm in another sub mode, I can go ahead and go to a different sub mode as long as I know the exact command. Because the help function, the CLI help function, isn't going to help me while I'm in another sub mode. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. So, common switch configuration modes, right? We talked about this already, right? But we didn't talk about how they look, right? So, let's look at the prompt all the way to the far left, right? And then correlate it to what it means, right? So if we got the host name of the device, right, and we have um config, right? What does that mean? That means we're in global configuration mode. Okay. Maybe, right? We have the host name, but we have config dash line. That means we're in line configuration mode, right? Whether that can be line console or line VTUI, we would have to go ahead and identify that, but we would be in line configuration mode. Maybe we have the hostname and device in config-IF. IF stands for interface, right? So now we're in interface configuration mode, okay? And how we type that out would be at global configuration mode, it would be interface, the type of interface, fast Ethernet, serial, gigabit, 10 gigabit, etc. Right? There's different flavors. It goes all the way up to, I think what I saw is 100 gigabit, 100 gigabit interface, right? And then a number of the interface, right? And there's different show commands you can use to verify that number, what have you. We'll get to that in the future, okay? There's also another configuration mode, of course, that you guys will learn about whenever we start discussing layer 2 and diving deep into the different realms of layer 2, is VLAN configuration mode, okay? So, of course, you see the host name, and then you'll just see the word VLAN with the pound symbol, okay? And then you'll go ahead and see, you'll know that is VLAN configuration mode, okay? And how to get there is VLAN and the number of the VLAN that you want to set. There is a limit, right? A limit of the actual number of the VLANs you can configure. We will get to that later. I don't want you guys to go into a rabbit hole. We're going to save all those goodies for the future chapters. Okay, here's the last slide for today. Okay, I don't want to blow you guys' heads up, but take a screenshot. Again, you guys will get copies of this slide after we're done with chapter 4. Okay, but this sums up everything that we talked about today, right? If we want to go ahead and if we're at privilege exec mode or enable mode, and we want to make changes to the device, we need to go ahead and get to global config mode. How do we get there? Configure terminal, or config T in short, right? Once we're in global configuration mode, what do we want to do? Okay, maybe we want to make a global change to the device, like changing the name of the device, right? Or changing something, right? And so you can go ahead and go by going to the different modes. You can look at the different modes by either the question mark, and the question mark will help you out. These are the 4 modes that, of course, this slide and, of course, this chapter talks about. But there's plenty of different modes you can get to, right? And plenty of different things you can configure in global configuration mode. We will get to that in the future, and all that will come with time, okay? And on that note, we're done for the day. Any questions?
No, sir. Appreciate you.
Okay. All right, guys. I'll go ahead and close this, and I'll upload to YouTube shortly. You guys have a great day.